On today's episode, spiritual fuckboys. Come across a few living in Bali, as have a lot of my girlfriends. And, it could be that you're just sitting in Roche's Cafe and this guy walks over to you and he says, energetically, I was called to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Felonious. But his name's not Felonious. It's like Derek or something like that. He's probably from like Arkansas or something. All right, middle America. But anyway, you hit it off. You connect deeply. Saying a lot of things that just really penetrating your soul and just tickling the nerves of your inner being and your inner child and all those sorts of things, right? So you go on this little adventure. You go to his workshops where he's sat in all white and he's on a chair like this, cross-legged, and he's just beaming. His aura is beaming. You continue to hang out. You go to ecstatic dance. You go to the cuddle puddles. You do the photo shoots where you're wearing drapey clothes in the middle of a rice field. You just living life together. You're playing those drums, those weird drums that are like I don't know what they're called. I don't know what those things are called, but they sound cool. Not gonna lie. And you just go on this experience together, right? And next thing you know, Alibu, his soul is calling him to a different direction. And you're like, okay. 2 years later, you sat there wondering, what the fuck? What the fuck happened there? This guy just dipped on me. And then you realize, oh shit. I got finessed. I got finessed by a spiritual fuckboy. Right? So today we're going to be talking about this breed of human. But again, this is not going to be about ragging on these guys. Right? It's going to be more of a cautionary tale. Just for people entering the spiritual realm and the spiritual workings, just in general, right? And I obviously got to create some context around this topic because there are far more guys within the spiritual community doing incredible things, incredible work. They're incredible people, right? And while I joke, there's a small group of people, just like in any community, any industry, any line of work, anything. You're going to get your people abusing their power or being manipulative or Machiavellian. You're going to get that, right? So while I joke and, if you know me, I like to be lighthearted on certain things. So for any guys listening to this that are in the spiritual community and take offense, look, a lot of you are doing incredible work. I get that. And I recognize that. But there are a lot of people that are not impressed by some of your fellow community members. And we're just going to bring a little bit of light to that. And this is a topic that a lot of people are kind of wanted me to speak a bit. I've spoken about it on other podcasts and everything like that. I mean, I live in Bali. You see a lot of them, but in Bali, there's like, it goes even a step further because then you've got the spiritual fuckboy who's also a DJ and a photographer. And it's like the triple threat, And I've had some of my friends, my girlfriends sort of, I wouldn't say, but kind of be blindsided, I guess, and just led to be confused by these guys. And for me, a lot of times, like the spiritual fuckboys, and they're almost kind of, they're a lot more, they could finesse people a lot better than just a typical everyday run-of-the-mill fuckboy. Now, I've got to give a reference to the word fuckboy. I don't necessarily like, we've got to create a definition around that as well. And that is that a lot of people kind of coincide that as, just a guy that's just like, emotionally unavailable and they don't want to commit and they're off having sex with a number of people. And again, like with labels, like with calling like a woman a slut for doing that. Again, a fuckboy is like, I think people really kind of haven't gotten a grip on what the meaning is. And for me, it's just someone that simply has a different agenda to the other person that's involved and is very misleading as to their intentions. They kind of go along with the other person's intentions, knowing full well that that's not really what they're after. And once they've kind of achieved their outcome, they alleviate themselves from the relationship or seeing the person. Right. And I think that's a big thing, whether or not you see it as someone who has a spiritual identity or someone just like, everyday person, is that it's the manipulation, it's the deceit, it's the lack of communication, it's the bridging of boundaries, it's all these sorts of things that I think are the connector. And it's not so much about the fact that I don't want to shame people or anything like that for simply being in a stage of their life where they're not really looking to be in a relationship. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as there's clear lines of communication of agenda and allowing people to clearly know where you sit and where you stand ahead of time and put the ball in their court. If they choose to be able to participate that's great. But if people are misled and you have a very distinct and different agenda that you've got and you withhold that, knowing full well that they may not want to participate in that, and you go along with the fact that they want something different, obviously that's an issue. So, and I've obviously got to give reference. I was single for 7 years. So, look, I felt like I didn't really have a lot of circumstances or situations where people, really didn't know where we both sat. I mean, again, a lot of time I was traveling in different places. If I had any engagements with, any other women, I think the expectations were pretty clear, right? But there was one time and that someone felt otherwise, and this was a big learning curve for me. And it was the fact that we had we'd shared a night together. They were traveling into town. They didn't actually live where I lived, and communication kind of died off. And I bumped into them out on a night in a town or at an event, and they were not too impressed. And I thought things were sweet. And I was wrong. And they had some choice words for me, and they actually had that. They'd been drinking a little bit, so they kind of weren't articulating themselves. I was sitting there listening, taking on everything, and their friend kind of communicated to me in a better way, kind of what they were feeling. And I like to talk about, interesting concepts. Like I kind of have like I'm either banter or talking about, deep sort of topics or interesting topics or things that interest me that maybe a lot of people don't. And when I talk about these things, and especially the women that haven't maybe been exposed to too many guys or haven't dated too many guys that like to talk about, certain things or certain concepts that they don't come into contact with often, it can be construed as, oh, this person is going really deep with talking about these different kind of conversations and topics, and seeing that as a deeper conversation, a deeper connection sometimes, as opposed to someone that just really loves talking about that with everyone that they meet. I like to go and have those conversations with my friends, family, like all these sorts of things. And that was when she said, when you talk about the things that you talk about, it could sometimes mean something different for someone else. And when her friend articulated that, that was when I really needed to even get clearer with people with where I was at, and whether or not I was leaving too much of an open door to construe things in a different way. And that was important for me. It was hard to hear that, because I obviously felt like I went about things in a really good way, or tried to be at least. And when I heard that, that was really tough to hear, but it was important for me to hear, just to make sure that I wasn't creating drama for people. Because again, anyone that knows me knows, like, I'm adverse to drama. Like, I'd have a few dates with people, and I'd say, oh, I'm going home, thank you. And they kind of got confused at the fact that I wasn't wanting to continue to go out and have more drinks, and it was because I can get the sort of feeling that they were in a stage of their life where maybe they want a little bit more than what I wanted. And I said to them, hey, look, I just really want to go home. I'm just going to go home. Like, I love hanging with you, but this is where I'm getting the feeling that you're kind of at a stage where you kind of looking for something different than maybe what I can give. And that's really not where I'm at right now. If you, and out of respect to you, and because I actually really like you as a person, this is where I'm at. I'm going to go home. If you want to come home and hang out, that's up to you, but I totally understand if that's not the case. Now, obviously that comes with a little bit of age and fucking up, and maybe not kind of articulating things that well, right? And I got to that point because I really just became so adverse to wanting drama in my life, and putting the ball in people's courts and being clearly articulate was just the standard of which I started to function from. Had it always been that? No, right? So before I start to go on a grind with other people, it's important to obviously reference that I've had to learn about that, especially when I was in single for 7 years, and being able to articulate and clearly articulate where I was at, and putting the ball in other people's courts so they didn't feel like they were being misled became super important, because I just really I fucking hate drama. Like, I just do not like I do not like people in my life being dramatic, like too much drama. So I don't like to bring that on myself. And that can be something that people experience a lot when it comes to dating. So that was actually really important that happened, right? Because that was something that I didn't realize even was a possibility that I could be doing. Now, when you're dealing with guys within the spiritual realm, and a lot of people that go into spiritual work or in spiritual community, they're people that feel like they've got a lot of shame, they've got a lot of guilt. Maybe they feel like they've made some mistakes in their life, and they do not trust their ability to make good decisions. So when they come into the spiritual community or spiritual work, and they meet someone that's can articulate things, and they're touching on things that they couldn't verbalize before, and they feel like they've got this knack of hitting the nail on the head with things that they felt but couldn't really get clarity on, and it creates this halo effect around certain people, right? And people that have made mistakes in the past, like I said, don't trust their ability to make decisions, so they start to put a lot of their power into a lot of people, a lot of other people, and sometimes they come into this world and the spiritual world, and self-development, all these things, and they have a hard time asserting any sort of boundaries, right? Because you meet these people, and in the spiritual world, there's a lot of toxic people. Like, and I hate the word toxic, but there's a lot of toxic people in the spiritual community. Some of the most toxic people I've ever met have been rigidly identified as being light and love. Like, I had a stalker. I like, and I'm not going to go into that because that's a whole episode in itself. If I read the messages I got from this person, like, this episode would go for an hour, right? So some of the most unhealthiest people and toxic people that I've ever come across are actually all the people that seem to identify as light, love, bliss, all these sorts of things, right? And I think that what I want to more touch on than anything is just have this be a cautionary tale for people entering into spiritual communities, is I want to encourage you to be able to feel comfortable asserting boundaries. I've had female friends who have had exposures to guys within that community that, have they've done things that were really sort of not right. They've had exposures to certain guys, and they've filmed them having sex, and without them knowing, and asked them about it, and they bring up certain things and try to sort of gaslight. Like, if you want to know what gaslighting is, like, some of people within the spiritual community, like, are the best at gaslighting, right? I've had people and friends that have said to me, well, my my coach was saying this and this and this, and it makes sense. And all I've had to do was twist some of the words around, no, use the jargon, and say, well, what about this? And they've gone, oh yeah, that makes. I go, have you just seen how easy it was for you to just abandon any of your ability to critically think for yourself and take on whatever this person has said, right? And that's rife within. Well, not I shouldn't say rife. Again, with a small amount of people, gaslighting is huge because we're very wordy, very articulate, been in the work for a while, and can really bounce around the fact that they take any responsibility. Now, this is a big thing that we see with people that go into the spiritual sort of line of work, is at one point they felt like they're the less of the less, or the low of the low, or the worst of the worst, right? And then they do some work, and then the shame gets manifested into higher than high, greater than great, better than better, good, right? And then that creates a possibility when we're all light and love, and they haven't really truly owned aspects of themselves, and the possibility that they're capable of doing wrong, doing bad, like all those things. It becomes hyper exaggerated one way, I'm worst of the worst, to I'm higher than now, right? And when you're in that space, it's hard to be able to take any responsibility for the fact that you're capable of doing wrong, that you're capable of being manipulative. And that's a really difficult thing, especially for people that have certain power within that realm. And a lot of people, again, with power, it's not necessarily something that changes people. It just highlights who they really are. And with a lot of guys that kind of go into that line of work, they see it as a really easy way to gain some certain power where they haven't been able to assert before in the traditional sense, whether it be career-wise, physicality-wise, attraction-wise, socially, by gaining any of those sorts of esteems. And that's why we're seeing these sort of, I guess, like, it's maybe not the right term, but these quite subordinate type males go into this, because it's like they get to gain power through using manipulation and appealing to the most wounded parts of other people to gain power. And again, that's just a small part of the community, but it is real. It does happen, and it's just something to pay attention to. So obviously the big thing is being able to differentiate between what are lessons, right? Because that's the tough thing. It's like, where is the line between, okay, this is a lesson, or this is a bridge, or a crossing of a boundary that I have, right? And that can be a gray area sometimes, right? It's like, where is it just that my ego is being tested, or this is a level of growth, and this is a boundary being crossed? And that's sometimes not really that easy to see. So the big thing is not so much how do you avoid these sorts of people, because again, people can't take advantage of you or manipulate you if you're not receptive to it and you've got strong boundaries. And that's just the tough thing, because again, like I said, when people go into this space, they don't trust themselves to make good decisions, because maybe they haven't in the past. Maybe they don't want to layer any shame by going against anyone that they respect. They want people to like them. Maybe they have people-pleasing tendencies, and it's hard to assert these boundaries. And that's really the main thing that I kind of want to, say to people, is it's okay to say that. Run the risk. I know people like to go into that realm and like have this cloak of armor where it's like, oh, that's just your ego being flared up. That's just your ego being flared up. That's just your ego being flared up to be able to escape any sort of responsibility, right? And a lot of people want to dodge that. And no one wants to feel like, oh, I'm lesser than, oh yeah, that's a true, oh that, yeah, it is. Oh, I'm less conscious than that person, or whatever. And so it's really just finding and questioning that, and loving yourself enough to be able to question those things, and run the risk of people not seeing you as not conscious enough. So look, that line of work, and again, even just with like personal development, it just really pays to have that critical line of thinking. And again, like I said, it can be tough. It can be really difficult, right? And the thing is, and again, like, people go into a space like this, and if there's someone that they thought was creating a safe space, and this is the hard thing, is that when people have got shame and they've made mistakes in their past and they're having a hard time, loving themselves beyond that and alleviating the shame, alleviating the guilt, when they enter into a space that they think is safe and it's been abused, they can go two ways. They can either layer more shame on top, or they choose to ignore the fact that they've been manipulated, because to feel as though you've made another poor, or you've had a lack of poor judgment again, would layer more shame on top. And that's the real tough and tricky thing, is like, either I recognize the fact that I've been manipulated again and layer more shame, or I avoid that by allowing it to continue to happen, right? And this is why it can be, for me, looking outside of it, because most of the stuff that's really brought me a lot of growth and change has not been so much of the spiritual work, but like a lot of psychology, and I think you guys can kind of see that. But I have gained a lot of benefit from spiritual workings, and I think a lot of the work is very valid, and I've got a lot of friends that are really incredible within that space, and even they themselves can attest to the fact that there are a few bad eggs. So guys, yeah, while I don't want to completely condemn the whole, because it's just, that's just really ignorant and just unfair on a lot of guys that are doing incredible work within the spiritual community and working with spirituality and being able to help people heal. Again, to turn a blind eye to the fact that there's this possibility of people being manipulative and abusing their power within that, again, is just something that I'm not willing to kind of participate in or ignore myself. So guys, again, just set boundaries and as best as you can. And if you are manipulated or any of those sorts of things, again, it's not a blind on you. So yeah, guys, to all my spiritual friends doing the right thing out there in that community, much love to you. And to anyone entering into that sort of line of work, it can sometimes be murky waters. Again, when someone's thirsty, they'll drink muddy water, right? And a lot of people are going in with a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, and things aren't clear. And when you go into that, and a lot of people providing a lot of different answers, you'll take on stuff that maybe isn't as best beneficial. But again, that's life, and you're going to have to make mistakes and have those things, kind of be exposed to you as you go. As I did, being a single guy, thinking that they were kind of going about things the right way, and then having one example be able to spruik me onto doing better and being more. So that's it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you've got anything else you want me to touch on, because this one was largely requested a lot of the time, so I've eventually gotten around to it, guys. If you've got anything else that you want me to touch on or speak on, or you got any guests you want me to talk about or talk with, hit me up, Instagram __ Ben James _, and I will see you on the next episode. Cheers.